mantidos ao longo dos séculos e dos milenios. Xa, eu falabache de como os poemas escritos nunha lingua determinada poden modificar e, de feito, a nova materia nun determinado sentido. Pero non, saca dai. Non todas as próteses actúan nun mesmo curso. Pensa na banca, por poñer un exemplo. Sí, nese sentido. O que tes é que perderlle o medo á escritura. Esa teima que tes e que non te das peigado dela. Esa de que por cada palabra tes que entregar un órgano. Todos os teus órganos ardendo eternamente na eternidade das chamas. Ese malestar, a hipocondría.
Questo è un testo corrispondente che o titolo do texto de Chús foi Este defunto que non para de falar, e o meu titolo This Dead Woman is Not Much Quieter. I is a chorus of loose musiform material. My mother's friends, the nurses, went hiking into Hawaii together, while my father stayed home in the living room reading biographies of famous men. It's from my father I have my obsession with reading, and because of my mother, I hike wherever I am. In forests or snowshoes or on the streets of Montreal, I hike and think. Walking with Nyla, we'd call each other up and away from my desk and her drawing table and pace together up and down the streets of our shared neighborhood in Montreal, talking of her preparations for an exhibition in Manila, or of the stakes that arise from my mapping of a new translation. Where would the words lead? Would it be a play or poem or just a strip of text in pixels across a screen? Nyla knows how a photograph can be beautiful, and meaning only hurts it. She has written with smoke in books in Istanbul and recorded the sound of wood in a gallery in Manila with Poklong Anading, the Philippine musician. It can't be underestimated what I've learned from our conversations over the years. We've had so many of them that even today, though we live very far away, we can converse by just going out on the streets and walking, or by hearing ambient sounds, or by looking up at a cloud covering the moon, for example. On our walks, we buy homemade ice creams at Meu Meu, in those days before Meu Meu sold peanut butter ice cream, and walk carrying their little plastic dishes and spoons that were really not spoons but sticks with a shallow bit for digging the ice cream up. We'd always buy two flavors that contrasted, pear and chocolate, bubble gum and burnt vanilla. We'd walk up Marianne and cross at Avenue Laval and head to De Bullion, past the Portuguese restaurant named after a fascist general, and stop a bit when we crossed at corners where cyclists had died, hit by cars. It's foolish, I say, just because Marianne goes downhill from the mountain and for 3 or 4 streets there's no stop sign. It's no excuse. On a bicycle you can't, when you arrive at Avenue Laval, fly through the stop sign. There are stops on all sides, yes, but if a car doesn't see you, it's fatal. We pass alongside Andrew's vitrine gallery, L'Endroit Indiqué, and stand at the corner near its 2 scratched glass windows, where soon will hang paired fragments of my translation of the Brazilian Wilson Bueno, in Franglock and in Mohawk lace, 1 text in each pane. In the Portuguese restaurant, the favorite dish is poulet au churrasco, and they are famed for it, so the restaurant at mealtimes is always full of movie producers and sound engineers, with the occasional translator and sculptor who walk past eating ice cream and speaking of the former wire factory across Marianne, where the translator once thought of buying an apartment. It was all a bit of a trial that year, she tells Nyla, as they stroll uphill past the gently camouflaged municipal salt storehouse, toward where the tiny Brazilian restaurant burned, and past the park with its pergola and paving stones imported from Portugal, its trees in their rich green that signal late summer. And we look across the house, to the house of the famous singer, the one with the raincoat and the birds on a wire. After that signature dish, they'd bring ruby porto in tiny clinking glasses. Mixing philosophy with cooking is a way to awaken visual memory and its linguistic substrate, which can glint anew. With Nyla, we nod together at the words of Blanchot. Even walking, I can't stop translating, haunted by an original that never was. Café Romano, with its twist of yellow peel, is a travesty to make coffee so bitter that lemon sweetens it, Nyla points out. We don't think, though, of lemon as sweet, I say to Nyla, and she says, what a place we live in. Neither coffee nor lemons grow here, and yet we have them easily and never think of the people who grew them. Which is true, and we turn down St. Dominic past the old fire station, still talking. Thomas Edison once said, the chief function of the body is to carry the brain around. But when we are walking, we are not just carrying our brains, we are bringing our cells into relation with other cells, and the activity in the mitochondria makes us conscious beings, and our embodiment is important to us as women and as artists in the world. My mother climbed up to the pass in the mountains and looked from one province into another. It was not so long ago, but now their hiking gear seems antiquated in the photos. Nyla knew my mother and nods. My mother often comes into our conversation, as does hers. I really want to investigate the relation of transmissibility, I said, with urgent speech, and Nyla nodded. The relation of text to bodies. We head down Division Street past the restaurant owned by the 3 Portuguese men, where waiters were once called hash slingers, and that didn't mean Moroccan drugs. It was the only restaurant, I said to Nyla, that served espresso when I first arrived. We walk past the street named for the 17th century explorer Duluth, and look up back at the mountain, at the scar where the funicular once ascended its escarpment. We turn into one of the smaller streets, past municipal housing projects, past kitchen garbage left by the walls of buildings, and onto the street named for a pope, from where we can enter a huge set of related buildings also built from quarried stone, where a nun had opened the first hospital in Montreal, and where she and her congregation knitted, after the English conquest, socks for Scottish soldiers, also colonized, sent to guard the newly and double colonized French, who were colonizing the native people. Nyla and I part here at Hôpital Hôtel Dieu. She enters its pavilion Vimont to continue her therapies. I keep walking through the landscapes of memory, through which my body is spatialized, and the city spatializes me.
Non despedes a desesperar, só nos queda un texto, así que pasa nada. Vamos entón co último. Secesión ten unha zona, unha parte que está construída, está escrita con datas de diario. Entonces, bueno, esta sección titúlase Mentras escribo, vai cada fragmento vai precedido dunha data. Son fragmentos que, bueno, construen como un friso, pero cada un deles ten unha data. 5 de abril. Un idioma danza sobre este gume, ou vea no deserto, sobre esta independencia. Un poeta é o máis parecido a unha privación da lingua que se pacta. O idioma pasa o seu través, como camiñamos un campo aberto. Pasa polo inorgánico, pola república vegetal, a placas vestas, enfeitiza, a couva. Destórgame este drama, lóstrego oscuro, ti.
February 26th. The light is April, but the cold is January. I roll in bed. A bronchial on the right side blocks the passage of air. There is too much music in my head sometimes. Send me texts. Send me another text. Be here. Translate this text for X. I leave texts. No, I love texts. I wear language as a prehensile tail to grip tryptophan in the skull. L's mother Mabel dies. Kim writes me and I write to L. Those Calgary mums, I am thinking. A generation we struggled to live up to. In my eyesight, in her eyesight, linguistic noise. I am this noise. Grasp this noise with noise. Do not master the world with your ears, your tongue.
29 de abril. Como camiñamos un campo aberto, como unha bala que na súa trayectoria abre o aire, entra na carne que a acolle e se pecha sobre sí, como a unha flor nocturna. Enfía o idioma, enfía o seu través, nas tumbas, pola boca cráter, polo esófago caverna, acciona esta insurrección. É un problema de civilización. As persoas xa non somos quenes de soportar o mundo no que vivimos. Non, non creo que os meus poemas sean crípticos. Non creo que as mandas sean crípticas.
April 23rd. We live in a land under historic treaties we have not honored. I have not honored. Our aerial mappings did not take into effect the effect of wind on migratory movements, the effect of this hill, of these reeds, beside this lake out of which a stream flows. My mother used to speak of the lands in the north, to the north, where clots from treed muskeg or sandy subsoil ooze tar.
30 de decembro. Nunha literatura, as palabras son a ausencia irremediable dos obxectos que, por outra parte, non son nada totalmente diferente desa ausencia e viceversa. Porén, este viceversa non se obtén porque podamos afirmar os obxectos son a ausencia irremediable das palabras que os nomean, que por outra banda non son nada totalmente distinto desa ausencia. O que non soporta a proba de consistencia en nunha literatura os obxectos son a ausencia irremediable, etc. E o mesmo sucede coas emocións, cos sentimentos, etc. Nun poema non existen obxectos, nin emocións, nin sentimentos. Tan só palabras que son a ausencia irremediable da estética que as provoca.
November 27th. Our violence was lived violence, a violence on the lands of others, their absence in the spaces of the house, relegation to the borders or to the stampede parade. Glint of it, bridge, what might act as bridge, dynamis.
6 de xuño. Na miña última estadía na cidade de Ourense, volvín a chegarme á casa do boxeador. Rehabilitábanna. En aquel preciso íntere sostíñanse en pé as dúas fachadas. O interior era un oco enorme e as máquinas escavaban un soto profundo coa idea dun futuro garaxe. Contemplaba o edificio desde o esporón da praza de San Marcial e gozaba dunha perspectiva elevada. Nun repente, as palabras impulsáronme a abrir o portón que, aínda que moi deteriorado, conservaba intacta a súa majestade. Entrei rapidamente no baleiro e fun aspirada cara arriba, xusto á altura do segundo andar, onde sobre un chan de nube gardenias, invisível, pero perceptível a través dos sentidos, sentín unha reproducción exacta do gimnasio e puiden atravesar todos e cada un dos seus tabiques, malia certa dificultade para camiñar sobre o algodón da nube, non maior, por outra banda, que aquela que se ten cando se camiña pola beira dos ríos na súa confluencia co océano. Pasei a tarde con M.O. nunha terraza. Veu en chover e non nos acollemos baixo os toldos. Internámonos na chuvia. M.O. protexeu a cabeza cun gorro de augas e eu defendínme cun fular rameado. Paseamos non totalmente corpóreos polas rúas. E se a identidade fose realmente todo aquilo que non somos? Preguntei. Un río, as rabazas e as oucas e as pontes que cruzan ese río e o viaducto. Nos últimos meses, continuou preguntando aquela voz, padecín diversos episodios de levitación. Nun deles era un deus que me suseitaba, a rotación helicoidal, a ascensión lenta e escultórica, e foi entón cando escribín a chama e a prega barroca. Os nosos rostros reflectíanse no bafo da burga, na transparente lenta combustión das brasas. Eu diría que máis ben se imprimiron, como nun sudario, as marcas da sangre.
June 18th. When I was last in my natal city on the eastern slope of the Rockies, I traveled to the avenue in the south, where the green bungalow once stood. A magnet, as Erin Mouré might say, of practices and fantasies. I stand outside the eye of moralization, of social unison. Yet when I speak I deform and remake this position, not single-handedly, but because, rather, this is a poem. A poem, although it has no lineation, just a rhythm that shares its tick-tock with that of thought. Not chit-chat, translation between geometric figures. The last time I returned to Calgary, I drove out to the Southern River, near the military firing range that in my childhood had occupied the land of the Tsutsina, where in the rustle of brown grasses by the reservoir we would hunt gophers or frogs, avoiding the scat of bear full of weed or grass or berries, depending on the season. And only the river told us what to do with our lives. And there we felt our skins rub in our shirts and stick with heat. We came with fishing rods taped to our bicycles and returned again and again to these steep slopes where our mother had brought us to pick berries as children, too small to see above the bushes, each carrying a bucket we had to fill. Here the sunlight burned into us and we were silent, standing among the berries in the scorching cauldron of the soil.